This video will be a very basic introduction to Unity and game making, for those of you who have just started but want to learn more. Hello again YouTube, and welcome to Coding Explained. This is the first in a series of Unity videos that will teach you how to use Unity correctly and efficiently. This video is thought of as a very basic introduction to Unity, sort of like the hello world of Unity programming. When you first open up Unity, you will be presented with something much like this. Unity has lots of menus, features and screens that we will cover later. For now, it's just important to get the basic idea of what Unity does. Over here where my mouse is, you see the hierarchy. The hierarchy is the window where you put all your game objects in your scene. A scene is sort of like a level in a video game. Your Unity game can have many levels, but for now, let's limit ourselves to one. If you right click here, you'll see a list of the objects you'll be able to put into your video game. These objects could for example include your characters, your environment, and your player. But since this is the hello world of Unity programming, let's limit ourselves to a simple cube object. Let's go ahead and change the color of the background a little bit so you can see the cube better. This is accomplished by going to the camera and then going to the background property and setting the color to whatever you like. Now that we can see it a little better, let's move on to play with the cube. If we go over to the inspector window, we can see that Unity already has a bunch of stuff attached to our cube. These are called components. Every time Unity makes a new object, it automatically fits that object with the components it thinks you might need. The interesting part here is that you can make your own components and add them to your object. Unity Engine is actually quite object oriented if you think about it. And if you think about the predefined components inside the Unity Engine, simply as scripts that have already been written for you, and of your scripts as components that have not yet been written, then you hopefully start to realize just how amazingly structured the Unity Engine is and how you can make anything with it. Now I want you to look at the top component here called Transform. Transform is a predefined component that Unity has written for us that allows us to manipulate the X, Y and Z of our object. As you see me playing around with the values, you can see that the object moves according to the input that I make. Now I think it's time for us to try and create our own component. This component will automatically go into the assets folder where all assets that we create are stored. Now, like I talked about, there'll be a lot of options for adding a lot of components that are already predefined within the Unity engine. But what we really want to do is go down and select new script so that we can create our own. We'll go ahead and name our component the move component. Now we can see the component that we just created alongside all the other components. But if we really look harder, we can see that all the other components have a lot of different stats and a lot of different options, while our component is completely blank and has no options yet. The parameters you can see in the other components are their public variables. We'll go ahead and create some ourselves. You simply double click the component you just made and Visual Studio pops up. Unity will already have made two methods for you. The start method controls what happens when you start the game. All code put in there will launch as soon as the game runs. The update method is called every frame. All code put in here will be executed every frame of the entire game. Now we'll have some variables that can be accessed from the editor. We will make these variables public so that we can access them. We will have a movement speed variable that will control how fast the cube will move, and we will have two Boolean variables that will control if the cube is moving left or right. We'll save this and jump over to the Unity editor. Now you can see how the variables that we just created are visible in the Unity editor, like with the other components. Now we will need to create some actual code for our component. We will put it in the update function so that it will be called every frame. You can see how when I change the values of the position attribute of the transform component, that the cube actually moves. So we want to access the cube, we want to access the cube's transform component, and we want to access the position variable of that transform component. So we'll call this meaning the cube, dot transform meaning the component, dot position meaning the position the component in. So we'll call the cube, we'll call this transform component, and we will call the position property of that transform component. Now let's write some code for moving the cube. We'll set the position to a new vector3. Vector3 is a data type in the Unity engine, and it is the data type used by the transform.position property. The vector3 data type allows you to easily put in x, y, and z coordinates. When you set a vector3 to public in your scripts, it will appear just like this. You will have 3 boxes next to each other, ready for input. Now we need to fill out those 3 boxes by code instead of manually. We'll start by saying this.transform.position.x, which will give us the x position, and we'll plus it with the movement speed. Then we'll say this.transform.position.y and this.transform.position.z. These will give us the position that the cube is currently in. And then every single frame of the game, we will add the value of the movement speed to the x component. We will only manipulate the x component in this example, because we want it to simply move left and right. So we need some additional logic here. If the user decided that the cube needs to move right, we will add the movement speed to the x position, which will make it move to the right. If the user in turn decides that the cube needs to move left, we simply subtract the movement speed, which will make it move left. I'll just copy paste some code in here since it's basically the same, and I'll change the if condition and set the plus to a minus. Now that that's done, it's time to save it and test our script. These top values that we made will be values that are set in the editor. Now if we just run the game, absolutely nothing will happen, because we have not set the values yet. The cube will just be sitting there, looking at us, waiting for something to do. But if we set the movement speed to something and decide that the cube needs to move right, it will be on its merry way. Now let's try the left one just to test it. And trying at a slower speed too. Well, now you probably think, good, we achieved to make a cube move. But the truth is that this script is a full-fledged Unity component in itself. That means that you can attach it to any object that you make, and then that object will behave in the same way. To further clarify this, I created this scene to show the script off a little bit. I attached the script to all the flying objects you'll see when we run the program. Essentially the only thing going on here is some game objects moving with a set speed and a set direction. Our script has accomplished this. I then added a little bit of special effects that I will show you how to create in a later video, and some new game objects videos. Be sure to subscribe. If you want more of these types of videos, be sure to subscribe to my channel, Coding Explained. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Oh, and if by some off chance you didn't like this video, your argument is pretty much invalid really. Why? Because I made a cannon who shoots freaking birds.